And the first property of human language is displacement. What is displacement? That's a good question. Because one of the property of human, we are talking about human, not animals language, is displacement. What is displacement? So humans can talk about things that happen in the past, things that are going to happen in the future. You can say, oh, yesterday I was eating breakfast at the beach, and tomorrow I want to go. That is displacement. That is just we as humans can do that, but animals cannot do that. Animals cannot talk about the past. Animals cannot talk about the future. Animals, we don't know if they can communicate. They can communicate, but what do they use that is linguistic to communicate? Some maybe some weird sounds, uh, maybe, but they don't produce words. They are not able to use displacement. That is just a property of human language. So one property of human language, according to the first objective, because according to the first objective, we should be able to mention at least three property of human language. And the first property of human language is what? Displacement, when we can talk about things that happen in the past, in the future. We can talk about abstract concepts, example, Batman, Santa Claus, Superman. That is part of displacement. We can also say that animals communication is they don't use displacement, they just use immediate moment. That's one property. Example, the bee language, when find a bee finds a nectar or pollen, they communicate. Maybe they dance. They dance. That is a weird dance that they make to communicate where the nectar is, or the location of the nectar, and then suddenly the rest of the bees comes. But that is immediate moment, not displacement. So displacement is just a property of human language. Another property, let's see, is arbitrariness. Arbitrariness is, well, I can say dog here in English is dog, but in Arabic it's another weird word. For example, I was talking with a friend in the morning, and then I said maíz or maíz, and the other word for maíz, mazorca, make a soup. Mazorca in Salvador, how do they call mazorca? And we speak Spanish, but mazorca, how do they call mazorca?
I think it's elote.
Elote. Well, I remember a friend of mine was going to make me a good food, but we went to Walmart to buy, the stuff for the soup. But then she asked me, go for the elotes and bring me 4 elotes. Elotes, what is that? Elote is maize, mazorca. But that is arbitrariness. Arbitrariness is no natural connection between linguistic form and meaning. One thing, a dog is dog here, but in another is. In animal communication, the connection between the message and the signal used to convey the message consists of fixed limited set of vocal form, but arbitrariness is another characteristics of human property. Productivity is another characteristic. What does that mean? What comes to your mind when we talk about productivity? Well, productivity comes from produce. Produce means that we can what? What can human can do with language? We can produce what? new expression for new objects, because language is changing. Language is alive. It changed, so we can produce. Maybe now we understand each other, but maybe in 100 years, many things are going to change, because in the Elizabethan time, Elizabethan age, Shakespeare time, the English was totally different. That is known as medieval English. Is totally different to modern English, to the point that a native speaker, if he go back to medieval times, he cannot or she cannot understand the English, because human language, the one property is that we can produce and create new expression. That's why language change. A language user can manipulate linguistic resources, open-endedness. That's what we were talking. Can manipulate your capacity to speak. You can even create new words if you want. But there is another thing that we have to read the chapter number 1, maybe chapter number 2, to see if everything that we produce is semantically and syntactic acceptable. Sometimes it's semantic is meaning is acceptable, but syntactic no. An animal have limits. So one property of human language is productivity. So we have so far we have 3 properties. The first one was what?
Displacement,
Displacement and
arbitrarity, and productivity.
3 properties. Let's see if we have more. Cultural transmission is another one. And cultural transmission is important in language, in human language, because here, for example, we have a lot of tiendas, and then in the tiendas we have chinitos. But those chinitos speak Spanish very well. And there are some chinitos that don't speak Chinese. They speak just Spanish. Even though their parents are Chinese, just because their parents are Chinese does not mean that they are going to speak Chinese. By genes transmission, no. The first language is acquired in a culture. If you get married, you go to the USA and you get married, then your child is going to speak English. Or if you go to Africa, African languages. That even though you're Panamanian, that's what cultural transmission means. For example, a Korean child living in the USA, he's going to speak English. That is another property. Cultural transmission. Let's see, we have another one. Duality. Duality. Distinct sound, distinct meaning. We have 2 levels there: physical level and meaning level. Physical level, at which we can produce individual sounds, and meaning level, we combine sounds. Okay. Distinct sound, distinct meaning. Sometimes one sound change the whole word, the whole pronunciation. And that's one aspect of English that is difficult to learn, because one single phoneme can have different sound, distinct sound. That's especially in phonetic, that you study phonetic. For example, A, phoneme A, have different pronunciation depending on the environment in which it occurs. Let's see if we have an example here. If we read language, we language, the A or the A sound, the phonetic A sounds like A language. But if we say pagar, how do you say pagar in English? Pagar.
Pay.
Then the same sound have different sound. That's important. A good question is language the exclusive property of human beings? Do you know the answer? I don't know the answer. Maybe you can help me. That's a good question. Is language the exclusive property of human beings? No. What do you think?
I'll say yes, Professor.
Hmm.
Chomsky said.
Okay, let's see. Let's see. Is language the exclusive property of human beings? Let's see. Chomsky. And then the second one are the communication system used by other creatures at all like human linguistic knowledge? Those are good questions. But let's see if maybe yes, the first one is exclusive of human language. It's language the exclusive of language is when we speak, we produce. There are some examples of people that say that parrots speak, but they don't speak. They just imitate. Mm, so yes and yes and no. That's the answer. Chimpanzee language. Some chimpanzees produce some language and they understand, and this is the case of Ua, which was able to understand 100 words, but didn't produce. So that's why didn't produce it. He could understand, but unable to produce. That was in the 30 and the 40. Vicky produced poorly articulated version of Mama Papa Cup. Very poorly. Non-human primates lack a physical structure vocal tract needed to produce sound. Non-human primates lack a physical structure vocal tracts needed to produce. So maybe the chimpanzees are very similar to us, but uh, uh, very similar, but